All right, now let's see how we can create an API endpoint for getting a single object. To do that, we should pass the ID of the object in the URL. Now, currently, we don't have this route. That is why we get this error page. So back to our project. Here inside the users folder, let's add a new folder. Here we need a parameter called ID, so we should wrap it in square brackets. Now, inside this folder, we add a new route file. Now, just like the last lesson, we should export a function called get that takes a request of type next request. Now here we should also access the route parameter, and we're going to use the exact same technique as before. So to refresh your memory, let's go to the user detail page, the one that has an ID parameter. So earlier we defined the props interface and said, here we have a property called params, which is an object with the ID property. So let's copy this, then paste it here. Now here we add a second parameter called props of type props. Now we can destructure this to grab the params property. Now we don't even have to define this interface here. We can define the shape of this object inline. So we replace props with square brackets and then add the params property. Like this. Now the code is getting a little bit too long, so let me put each parameter on a separate line. Good. Now we don't need the props interface anymore. Good. Now in this function in a real application, we're going to fetch data from a database. If the data is not found, we should return a 404 error, meaning not found. Otherwise, we return the actual data. So let's see how we can implement this. Now, for this lesson, I'm going to make up a rule and say, if the ID is greater than 10, we're going to return a 404 error. So we check if ID is greater than 10. We return next response, .json. Now here we can add an error message. So let's pass an object with an error property set to user not found. Now, as the second argument to the JSON method, we pass an object, and in this object, we set status to 404. Okay. Now, I made a mistake here. We don't actually have the ID property. We have to prefix it with params. Okay. Now, otherwise, if the data is found, we're going to return it to the client. So we return next response, .json. Now, again, I'm going to hard code an object. Let's say here we have a user with the ID of 1 and the name of Mosh. Let's test this. So back in the browser, let's go to users 1, we get Mosh, but if we go to users 11, we get user not found.